I'm Cynthia James, and this network is about changing lives one woman at a time. Hello, and welcome to Women Awakening. I'm your host, Cynthia James, and I am so excited that I have the opportunity and the honor of introducing you to fabulous women. These are women that aren't exceptions. They're just examples of what it looks like to be in their dharma, to be in that space of bringing forth the things that they're passionate about and inspiring others to do the same. And so they're way showers and they're game changers, actually. Every single woman that I interview, has great insights, awesome wisdom, and really, you can take notes because there's always things that you can take away and use. We do these every week, and we're on all the platforms: Spotify, iTunes, iHeart, Spreaker, Amazon, video on YouTube. You just look for Women Awakening with Cynthia James. You can also go to cynthiajames.net. That is my website. Let you know all the things I'm doing in my world, and there's lots of gifts and things to inspire you. I want to tell you, I have someone I don't know today, but I'm very excited to interview her. Her name is Dr. Tina Schermer Sellers, and she's a licensed sex and gender feminist psychotherapist. She's a best-selling author, a researcher, a Emeriti professor, and a media personality whose expertise spans sex therapy, spiritual intimacy, parenting, medicine, and social justice. She is known for exposing the impact of patriarchy and sexual shame on our ability to securely attach to our partners and instruct our children to attach to theirs. So, Dr. Sellers' book, Sex, God, and the Conservative Church, was erasing shame from sexual intimacy, has had a global impact. And her latest book, Shameless Parenting: Everything You Need to Know to Raise Shame-Free, Confident Kids and Heal Your Shame Too, was a new release bestseller in 8 categories. And in 2015, Dr. Sellers founded the Northwest Institute of Intimacy, a postgraduate institute to train psychotherapists, educators, clergy, and physicians in sexual health, healing sexual shame and trauma, and understanding their sexual biases. Tina, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Cynthia, for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
Well, I want to start with how you grew up. Chances are you didn't come on the planet to be a sex therapist.
No, I did not at all. But as I look back, I can see where the universe, however you want to think about it, was guiding me in a very particular way. I grew up in a Swedish immigrant home. And while my family had its bones in its closets, and of course was like any family, there's no such thing as a perfect family or a perfect human. We're radically valuable and radically imperfect. My family was the same. But one of the gifts that my family, my extended family, gave me is there had been generations of openness around talking about sexuality and sexual health, emotional health, relational health. And there were no topics that were off limits. And so I grew up being able to ask my grandparents, my great aunts, my uncles, my parents questions as they came up. I listened to them banter and talk about sexual things or relationship things or teasing or whatever, just throughout growing up. And I thought every family was like mine. And I was literally in my 30s teaching in a marriage and family therapy program, teaching the human sexuality class, because I thought, well, why not? That would be fun, right? When I started learning from students and from clients that my upbringing actually was very rare in the United States, and the vast majority of people that I was either treating or teaching had grown up in homes that were silent or silent and shaming around their bodies and sexuality, even emotional health and relational health, like boundaries and autonomy and, just knowing how to navigate what's being a good friend and what does it mean to be a good friend and so on and so forth. And so many people in their development, in their sexuality and relational development, had really gotten the bulk of their knowledge from friends and from media, and very little actual information. So I had the good fortune of learning about sexuality and bodies and reproduction and how you treat people and what exploitation is and isn't, all of that, just like I learned about recipes, Swedish recipes, and how to take care of yourself and how to brush your teeth. And I learned about it all in a very collaborative, open kind of way. And the vast majority of people that I later came to treat and teach, that was not their experience, and it was heartbreaking to me. And it was out of that, and out of the gratefulness that I had for the family that I grew up with, and then really studying the Northern European countries and how different they were from America, that I decided I needed to do more speaking and writing about it, because so many people were dealing with so much pain and difficulty in their lives and in their intimate relationships, the relationships that were most meaningful to them. And I thought, I need to do what I can to support people living fully into their beauty and their desire to love and attach.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in the 50s, and no, we were not having those conversations. In fact, there was a whole tie to it around religion. And what it was so interesting, you were supposed to be this beautiful virgin until you got married, and then you were supposed to be this sexual goddess. And it's like, well, what's the bridge? Okay. And so I totally get what you're saying. So I want to talk about your first book before we get to the latest one, because I just the title was so beautiful to me. It was like Sex, God, and the Conservative Church, Erasing Shame from Sexual Intimacy. And well, first of all, huge topic,
Yeah.
but a big topic because it's like if you're not taught to be open, if you're not taught to share intimacy without shame, then you're just mucking around trying to figure it out.
That's right. And often having experiences that are less than ideal, sometimes hurtful, sometimes traumatic. And then that then informs other experiences that you have. You've not been given the language to talk about it, so you often don't even know how to talk about it or express yourself. You've been absorbing the messages of culture, which might not be helpful. They might be, men like this, women have to protect themselves from men, or if men act out their desire because desire is bad, then it must be her fault. I mean, these just messages that aren't always helpful to our relationships. So, I mean, I love that you started there, because that's really where I started too. I started to say, well, has America ever been sex positive, or has it always been sex is dangerous? you know? And I mean, I worked on this book for 11 years. That's how long it took me to really ask some of these questions. And so we first started really looking at history, like what's been happening historically in America, and then on the Abrahamic line, longer than that. And what I found was there had been all of these tides of being super conservative or ascetic almost, just it's dangerous, shut it down, separate body from spirit, right? You can't trust anything, a lot of that. And then there were other times where people were asking more questions and there was more openness in the culture. And what I found was when a culture was frightened, there had been a famine, there had been an illness, a plague, there had been an economic downturn. For us, the latest time was at around 1980, between 75 and 80, 81. And we had an economic downturn in 80. We had a reaction to second wave feminism. And then AIDS hit the East Coast in 80 and the West Coast in 85. So there ended up being kind of a frightened public. And the powers that be were really trying to push a capitalist agenda. In order to do that, they needed to get their people in. So they formed the religious right and the moral majority. And they put forward a thing called family values. It didn't have anything to do with family values. It had to do with increasing the power of corporations and people. But when they put that forward, they were able to, and then what they did is they made abortion the issue. So
Mhm.
most people don't know that the Southern Baptist Church was pro Roe v. Wade from the passage of it in 74, even before that, through 1979. But there also had been segregation in the religious schools. That was now no longer federally allowed. So they had to come up with another issue to rally the people. Really, again, it was racial issues in a lot of ways. And so they did around abortion that it had always been, biblical to not have abortion, which is not true. They did all of that and rallied this group of people to be sort of pushing this agenda forward. This agenda has been being pushed forward now for 45 years, and but what it did as far as sexuality goes, it was sex is dangerous. So now it's not just don't have sex until marriage, which like you were talking about, but it went further. It was don't think about sex. Be pure until your marriage, your heterosexual marriage. Don't think about sex. Don't want sex. Don't do anything sexual with yourself or anyone else, or you will ruin your chance of a good relationship in the future and ruin your relationship with God. And this was what began the purity movement in the United States, but it also began the abstinence only movement in the United States, which was federally funded religious education in our public schools.
Okay, but hold on. But
Okay.
in the meantime,
Yeah.
people were doing all kinds of shady stuff behind closed doors with prostitutes and all kinds of other stuff and rape and incest and all this other stuff
Right.
while they're saying don't do that.
Right. Absolutely. There's no real accountability to what does it mean to live in integrity? What does it mean to treat people with respect and mutuality? You have to realize by pushing a capitalist agenda, we began pushing the agenda that it doesn't matter what you do, it just matters that you make money for your stockholders. Right. So let me give you an example. In 1985, we removed the regulations in our media in the FCC, the Federal Communication Commission. So now media could say and do anything it wanted as long as it was making money for the stockholders. So what did we start selling? Violence against women,
Yeah.
TV, movies, then the internet and music videos, video games, especially targeting boys against violence against women. So we see an increase in rape and violence. We have a plea to the Congress every single year since 1972 to pass laws protecting women. We don't pass any laws protecting women. So, yes, 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 all of this acting out behavior was going on because people are silent, they're underground with it, and they're acting out because they're bringing in all this. I can do whatever I want, I'm not accountable.
Right.
Now, this is
Well,
right in front of us, right?
right. And the women are supposed to, no matter what happens, have these babies that they don't want and are ill
That's right.
prepared to take care of.
That's
And
right.
and so the thing that's really what I love about what you're saying is that that whole arena does not open to spiritual intimacy
No, no,
and
no,
connection.
no.
It's like,
Safety, no.
yeah, no, no.
Mm,
And so if you're out here having sex, you're ashamed of it and hiding it, or you're just
right,
out of control. And and
right.
and so from your point of view, right? What what that book that you wrote,
Yeah,
what do you think was the most important tool or piece of information that women could connect to open
yeah.
to the fact that our sexuality is a beautiful thing?
Right. Well, first, what I did is I showed what had been happening historically. Like, this isn't about you and something being wrong with you. Whatever your experiences have been that have been hurtful or painful, you were inside a system that was allowing this to happen and actually putting you in harm's way.
Mhm.
Everybody was put in harm's way. in different ways. They were put in harm's way. And so they had, many people, most people had unfortunate experiences. But then after saying, so this is what's been happening historically, then I went into, so what was the effect? What's been the effect of religious sexual trauma in general in people's lives, and how do you heal? I also put a chapter in there about how all of these ideas played into what was happening, culture that was selling people, selling goods, and saying you can use people to get whatever you want. So a consumer-based capitalist culture like ours was saying there's no accountability in there at all. And so for people to see that basically the church was in bed with capitalism in a particular way that was hurtful to people and to relationships and families and communities and neighborhoods, right? And so to say, okay, so this all happened, it was you were caught in a system. Here's how it's likely affected you. This is where you're noticing that you're struggling. Here's how you heal. And then the book ends with, here's some practices, some things you can do to begin to align your heart and your soul with your behaviors, like with how you want to touch and be touched, how you want to be listened to and you want to listen. So how to create safe relationships so you can bloom and others can bloom. So we talk about, so I just kind of give the whole story that take them there. And then the other book came about because I had people that were saying, okay, that was so helpful. Thank you so much. I see, and I've been working on my healing. Here's been what I've been doing. Now I've got kids in my life and I just
Yep.
don't want to do to them what was done to me. So I know what not to do, but I don't know what to do. And I said,
Yep.
I got you. I got you. I will hold your hand. And that book, Shameless Parenting, which really is about reparenting yourself and walking alongside little ones, is really put together in such a hand holding way. It's like birth to two, 2 to 4, 4 to 6. Here's what those are going to be curious about. Here's how they're likely going to express it. How will that be for you? Do you feel yourself going like this? Just put your hand on your heart and say, that's shame. I got that from somebody who loved me but didn't know what to do. Right. And then take a deep breath. And then here's the top books. Here's the top websites. Here's the things to say. Here's the things to say to yourself. And I just do that in these tiny 2-year increments all the way through the book. So I say to people, just be 2 years ahead of whatever little ones you have in your life, and you'll be fine because you don't have to have it figured out, but I'm going to show you what to do. And you can change the legacy right here, right now.
Well, I love that. And I want to talk about the social media, and I
Yeah.
want to talk about how women have been through, especially music, have been sexualized.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I'm watching, what I watch with my own grandchildren and stuff is like, well, I want to be sexy and I want, but then I don't like the attention I get the way I get the attention. And so and then there's shaming that happens in their social media groups. And so they're trying to figure out, who am I? And is it
Mm-hmm.
okay to be sexual? And do I have to be a hot mama with my cleavage showing and the tiny little skirts?
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think there's so many conversations to be having along the way. And that's another reason that book can be so helpful, because we want to be developing in kids. So by the time they're 8, 9, and 10, they've got some what I'd call media literacy. So
Mm.
they're asking, well, who's producing this thing I'm watching? Who's benefiting? Who's included? Who's excluded? Right. And they start just developing the awareness that everything we're consuming is produced and someone's benefiting but someone is not. And so you help them think critically, right? You affirm the fact that they want to feel good and they want to look pretty or they want to look strong. You affirm that, but then you're like, how do you know, regardless of what anybody else think, what feels right on you? Putting that tutu on with your sweatshirt and your football helmet, does that all feel good to you? Great. Okay, so how do we learn to hold on to ourselves, even though we live in a world that is trying to get us to think we're not good enough if we don't look like this? And
Yes.
that's helping them know that that's about selling, right? When kids look at media and nobody's there to have these conversations with them or help them filter some of this stuff and even help them to turn it off, sometimes, then what ends up happening is they absorb the media's messages. And we know from research that right now we have 50% of 6-year-old girls, 2/3 of 9-year-old girls, and 90% of 15-year-old girls that modify their diet because they already know from media that they're not good enough the way they are, right? But they need somebody who's been saying all along, Sweet Pea, this is your background. This is the way bodies work in our family, and yours is spectacular. And do you know what? There has never, ever, ever in how old the earth has had people on it that there's been a you. You are just the way you're supposed to be. And you're not gonna look or sound or think exactly like anyone else. And the world needs your authenticity. That's what we need. And so they need a lot of other voices in their lives reminding them that what's happening in media is about selling and running our economy. And it's not about them. It's not always got their best interest at heart.
Right. Well, and I love this whole concept of conversations, because here's the thing, though. I think with so many families, both parents working
Sure.
and the kids are, being raised by computers or TV or whatever, a lot of them aren't even eating together anymore. 'Cause when I grew up, eating together was a big deal. We all
Yeah.
ate dinner together.
Yeah.
Um, but I think the importance of having that kind of conversation, because I don't, you're so blessed. I mean, I was sitting there listening to you going, wow, that's really great.
Yeah.
In my family, African Methodist Episcopal, that's how I grew up.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, there was so much sin around your sexuality and being sexual or having those feelings that everybody hid the conversations, and then there were all kinds of secrets instead of saying, well, let's talk about how you feel and let's talk about how you can use that for your benefit to be healthy.
Right, exactly. One of the things I talk about in the book is when I had asked that question, had America and Christianity had it ever been sex positive? And I kind of came to a no, it hasn't.
Right.
Um, I think Jesus was pretty body positive, but as soon as we get to the formation of the Christian church in the 4th century, then it's very much spirit is separated from body. The men are competing for places in this new church by denying the body, all of that. And then we get to where we are now, but really, so I said, well, because I had worked with enough people that are like, I can't go to the Eastern thinking, like that doesn't feel good to me. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to find out if on the Abrahamic line, like going into Jewish writing, if there was ever anything positive. And then I found all these beautiful body positive, sex positive, um, deep, intimate relationship positive kinds of messages and stories and whatnot. And one of them that I talk about, because I give about 8 in the book, is that sexuality or desire was seen as the breath of God, the breath of God, and there's a story from like 500 BC, and it talks about that the rabbis of this town were just so worried, and people's sexuality seemed out of control, and they were just, kind of frantic about it. And they went into the Holy of Holies and they begged God, please, please take this away. And God said no. And they begged, and God said no. And it went back and forth like this for a really long time. And then finally, God says, fine. And then out from the Holy of Holies jumps this spirit of the lion of fire, and it goes across the whole village. And then the next day, the hens stop laying eggs, the artists stop creating, everyone basically falls into a deep depression. It's like the whole town stops. And so they go back into the Holy of Holies and they're like, okay, can you just turn that one back on and just turn the sexuality one off? And God says, no, with all great gifts, the gift of creativity, the gift of creation, the breath of me, with all great gifts, desire's a gift, you must learn to manage it.
Mhm.
You manage it so that it's serving love and justice. You make decisions like, is how does this serve me and serve another if it's going to affect another? How is this a just way to be? But desire, the feeling of desire, I want this, I want to make this, I want to create this, I want to do this, I want to love you, I want to touch you. That is the breath of God. And there's another story that they talk about when babies are born, that the first breath is the coursing of the breath of God, the creative breath of God in and through your body. And that's inspiration in spirit until your last breath, which is expiration, the
Mm.
spirit leaving your body. That's a very different way to think about desire. So now in a family, you can say, oh, sweetie, I love that you have that desire. Let's talk about how you manage it in a way that makes you feel good about you and makes you feel good about how you're treating other people, because we have a responsibility to both. It's a very different and ongoing conversation that you have.
100%. And it creates such a safe space to
Right.
be able, especially, when you're growing up, adolescents or whatever, there's confusion and there's all kinds of conflicting feelings and stuff. To be able to talk about that is incredible. I
Yeah.
want to know how people find you. How do they get your books? How do they like get your wisdom?
Right. Well, you can find the books really easily on Amazon. You can just use my whole name, Tina Schermer Sellers. So that's TinaSchermer, and then Sellers. You can look me up that way. I have a website with that as well. If you want to buy the books at a bookseller, and if they don't happen to have it, just ask them to get it for you. They'll be glad to go get them, and it'll probably take a week or whatever, but you can get them that way. Um, I'm on Instagram at Dr. Tina Shameless. So DRTINA and then Shameless. And you're welcome to reach out. If at any point somebody wants a copy of one of the books and they can't afford it for any reason, just DM me. I'll send you a promo code so that you can listen to it. I don't want anybody to not get it when they really want it because they can't afford it or for some reason. So just let me know. Yeah, so those are probably the primary ways of, my website, Instagram. I'm on Twitter, but not as much anymore because I don't really like what's going on with it. And then my books are there, and I really love engaging with people around the books, questions that they have. Love being a part of people's healing, so that they can have the relationships and the life of thriving that they want and deserve, I believe. So
Well, it's beautiful. Okay, ladies, I would say run, do not walk to get these books because I think it's important for us on a whole lot of levels. Well, I asked the same last question on this show. The show is called Women Awakening. What do you think is the most important thing about women awakening in this moment?
I really think learning to listen to your heart and trust the voice within. I believe we have lots of forces of love in our world that are trying to speak to hearts that are open to what love and justice are and what it means to live in that. And I really believe in the feminine force of that. Women often have been practicing, so epigenetically through history, have been practicing listening to others, and they need to, and that's given them a lot of wisdom, right? They can see a lot of patterns of what's been going on, and they need to listen to themselves, and in the wisdom that comes into their own hearts, use that to bring forward, practices of love and justice, and all the ways that that is now going to begin, I believe, emerging and have more power over the sort of selfish capitalistic kinds of things that have been so hurtful for so long, that really have been a part of patriarchy. And it's time for that to close. It's time for that chapter to close. And women are going to be the ones, and actually I think Black women in particular are going to be the ones to lead that charge, and Indigenous women. And I think that's where we need to listen and listen within and join forces together. So there you go. That's what I think. And that's what I'm doing.
Well, Tina, you are inspired and inspiring. I'm so honored to know you and to get to feel your energy and your heart and your wisdom. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me, Cynthia. It was wonderful to be with you.
Okay, ladies, I close this show the same way with different words. You are unique. You are unrepeatable. You are a vessel of love and a vessel of beauty and grace in all its forms, including your sexuality. So what I want to say is whatever's happened to you doesn't define you. You get to choose how you want to move forward. You get to choose how you want to bring your voice. You get to choose how you want to stand in your power because the world needs you. We need you. And there should not be any form of patriarchy that defines who you are and who you've come here to be because you are fantastic. Thank you so much for being here. I love you and I'll see you next time.